This hunch was proved right in 2014 when the bones of hundreds of different animals were discovered. A team led by zoo archaeologist Mary Steiner of the University of Arizona in Tucson uncovered archaeological layers filled with the rubbish and remains of human occupation between 10,500 and 9,500 years ago. Sifting through the debris, it became clear that what the villagers were eating over time had changed dramatically. For the first 500 years, the men, women and children of the settlement feasted on wild fish, hares, tortoises, deer and a number of wild sheep. For the next 500 years, however, the proportion of ovine bones steadily rises until, by 9,500 years ago, nearly all the remains come from sheep. Analysis of ancient sheep pee, which leaves behind salt traces, also showed how quickly sheep came to dominate the village. Over the relatively short 1,000-year period that Ashikli-Hoyuk was occupied, people shifted from hunting wild sheep to then keeping just a few tethered up in the narrow alleyways between the mud houses, to finally large-scale management of sheep in pens on the edge of the village. Sheep farming had arrived. Although when is often the first question we ask about our switch from hunting and gathering to farming, the more interesting question is perhaps how. The relationship between sheep and humans isn't one of mutual symbiosis, the beautiful harmony that exists, say, between man and dog. Sheep don't need us, and yet we've somehow persuaded them to stay. One idea is that the dog should take credit. In the wild, wolves have been seen herding caribou as part of their hunting strategy, and it's been suggested that an enterprising Stone Age individual saw this natural sheepdog instinct and used it to their own advantage. Perhaps our ancient ancestors realized that, with the help of a canine companion, wild sheep could be herded and managed without too much effort, turning a feral food resource into a controlled flock. It's true that people started to keep pets some years before they started to domesticate livestock. One lovely example in northern Jordan, a 16,500-year-old grave at Uyan al-Hammam, uncovered a man deliberately buried with his red, presumably tame, fox. But training a wild dog to round up wild sheep would have been chaotic if not impossible. The days of one man and his dog were still some way off. If anything, as we'll see later in the book, sheep helped to domesticate dogs. It's much easier to domesticate an animal if you can catch it young. Many theories about how sheep were domesticated have centred on the idea of hunter-gatherers bringing wild lambs back to their camps as pets for their children, or to fatten up for later. You can imagine this scenario. A wild ewe has been killed in a hunt, leaving behind a tiny lamb. Hunter-gatherer decides to pick up the lamb and bring it back to the camp. There, it can be looked after by the family and either kept for milk or eaten at a later date. It makes sense on the face of it, but there's an issue with weaning. Any lamb that was old enough to survive by grazing, rather than its mother's milk, was probably nearly full size and not the easiest candidate for a grab and run. Life would be immeasurably easier if you could get a very young lamb and imprint it on a human. That way it would form such a close attachment to a person that they could control its every move. The only way to do this would be to take a lamb from its mother as soon as it was born and breastfeed it. And so, astonishingly, the history of sheep may indeed start with a woman nursing a newborn lamb. Far from this being a strange, repugnant idea, anthropology finds modern-day parallels in places such as New Guinea, where young piglets are taken in and nursed alongside children to become part of the family group. Historically, women across cultures have been encouraged to breastfeed young animals for many different reasons, not just for the animal's benefit, including to promote lactation, harden the nipples, and prevent conception. Indeed, when Mary Wollstonecraft, 18th-century writer and feminist philosopher, was dying of sepsis following the birth of her daughter, Mary Shelley, who went on to write Frankenstein, the postpartum doctor insisted that puppies be brought in to suckle on her breasts and encourage Mary's body to expel the infected placenta. It didn't work, incidentally, and she died shortly afterwards. As recently as 2005, the story